The earth is a beautiful combination of nature and people. Human beings have very close relationships with nature. If one side starts to fall, then the other side will also fall. What would happen if the condition of people's lives gets worse? Will nature stay beautiful independently? According to the movie Global Poverty, poverty has been a problem for a long time. It is currently one of the most serious issues in the world. Researchers have brought up this issue many times, but the problem has not been solved. Poor people exist everywhere on the earth. Even now, there are people who are lacking resources to eat and drink. As time passes by, upcoming generations will live in a worse environment, and the world would lose another chance of rectify this chain of increasing destitution, while the top few percent of rich people becomes richer. As this vicious cycle continues, the difference between rich and the poor people's quality of life will increase because of global poverty. As there is a close relationship between nature and people, and there is also an important invention of people that is related to the earth's beauty, it is music. Music is everywhere in the world and has an important role in the movie Global Poverty. In the beginning, the movie starts with slow and soft dynamic music. As the facts and information becomes more serious, the narrator's voice becomes angry and the music becomes darker, faster, and louder. For instance, the movie reveals that the health of the Earth's population is poor and makes an estimate that the Earth will depend on the top 2% of the world's population in the future. The movie also shows that every year, over 1 million people are overwhelmed by poverty, which stems from macroeconomic issues. The world's economy is slowly contracting, and it is heading towards a worse economic condition. Nicholas Eberstadt, who is the author of the article, proposed that the poverty issue has been one of the most serious problems since the early 1900s. Ironically, one commonality he found that is a majority of poor people lives in resource-rich countries. However, even when governments are wealthy, citizens' living conditions might not be up to par because the government can spend much money on them. The economist Peter Bauer defined great government. Economic achievement depends upon a people's attributes and attitudes. Resource and other physical wealth are not sufficient for the whole nation to make significant strides toward. Even though the background music sets a tone of the poverty issue, the characters' actions also manifest the seriousness of the issue in the movie Global Poverty. In the movie, actions of characters could be divided into two actions, the rich and the poor. It is hard to follow the characters' actions in the movie because the movie starts with a general background of poverty. As the issue gets into more depth, the movie starts to show the contrast between rich and poor people. The city is full of tall buildings and cars and people. Numerous cars form a long line, and the crowds of people are busily going their own ways. The movie also mentions poor people. Their actions are very different from the rich people's actions. The crowds of people are moving in different directions, but the poor people move as a group. For example, kids are playing in front of their houses with friends, and parents are looking for food and water to support their families. Some people are on a fishing boat to sell fish, and other people are standing in front of houses to buy food from the boat. Some kids are drinking water from lakes. We do not want to see these scenes often because they are difficult to watch. In Journal of Social Philosophy, David Shortcart proposes what we should do and how this issue could be addressed to solve the poverty issue. He brings up two philosophers' opinions, Peter Singer and Thomas Podge. To support his argument, they both agree that global poverty is a big problem in our nation, but their views are slightly different about how to fix the issue. Singer argues that if the top 0.01% of rich people can use money to help the poor, the poverty issue would no longer be a problem. On the other hand, Thomas Podge proposes that we should not be fully engaged with the poverty issue because the problem will be difficult to fix unless we share at least 1% of our income with poor people. Shortcut's proposal relates to characters' actions from the movie because we should feel more inclined to help poor people after witness how the poor people actually live. If poverty is a global issue, is it possible to narrow it down to a few countries and ignore the rest? The movie mentions only a few places where the poverty issue is becoming a more serious problem today. However, even affluent countries cannot be ignored, as the article points out. Poverty in the United States shows the poverty issue in the US. In the movie, Global Poverty points out Nigeria, the Philippines, and globalization. This article and the movie's information fit together well to show examples of poverty. The U.S. Census Bureau report shows that the second most significant annual increase in poverty rate in the U.S. since 2004 occurred in 2008 to 2009. This report divides people into categories such as race, age, residence, work experience, and family. African Americans had the highest rate of increase in poverty, and aged between 18 and 64 had the highest rate of increase in poverty. Also, 87.6% of poor people were born in the same country where they currently live. The movie mentions different examples of global poverty. For example, Nigeria is the largest oil exporter in the world, but 70% of the population is living under the poverty line. Also, it mentions that half of the world's population is poor. Another example is the city of Legas in Philippines, which has a rich population. Their population was 700,000 in 1960, but it will rise to 60 million by 2025. The gap between the rich and the poor has been growing wider, and as the population increases, this gap will become even wider. People in the world should help each other, but the trend towards increasing poverty has led to a wider gap between the rich and the poor. It is not too late for us to break this cycle of poverty. As the U.S. Census report shows, people around us live under the poverty line. Unless we reach out to help those who are in need, this vicious cycle will grow out of control until it becomes everyone's issue. We could at least get started to help poor people by donating clothes, shoes, books, and money. If we pay more attention to people who need help, then the differences between rich and poor people will begin to decrease.